Hi everybody, welcome back to the Chapter 2 demonstration videos. In this video we'll use the round, payment, and if functions to calculate a monthly loan payment and to create a loan amortization schedule. This is a $25,000 loan with 6% simple annual interest to be repaid over 36 months. The first thing we need to do is to calculate the monthly payment using the round and payment functions. With your cursor on B8, open up the arguments for the payment function. PMT is the abbreviation for payment. Rate is the annual interest rate divided by 12, because we're calculating monthly interest. The NPER box is the number of payments, B7. The present value box is the amount borrowed, B5, which is $25,000. Future value, leave it blank unless you have a balloon payment. We do not have a balloon payment. We are going to fully amortize this loan, so leave the future value box blank. Type box. Put a 1 in the type box if you're going to make the payments at the beginning of the month. We have a regular loan payment which calls for payments at the end of the month, so leave the type box blank. Click OK, and for some reason Excel calculates a negative number when you use the payment function. We don't want a negative number on our worksheet. To fix it, remember that a negative of a negative number equals a positive number. So let's modify our formula by adding a minus sign between equals and payment. We will have some rounding problems with our amortization schedule unless we use the round function with our payment function. So let's modify our payment formula to add the round function to it. And remember that we're going to round to 2 places to the right of the decimal. Equals round, parentheses, minus payment. These were the payment arguments that we entered in the payment function, comma 2 tells Excel how to round 2 places to the right of the decimal, in parentheses. So in order to fully pay off this $25,000 loan with 6% interest over 36 months, our monthly payment must be $760.55. Now let's prepare an amortization schedule that shows the amount of each payment applied to principal and interest and the principal balance after each payment has been made. First, we'll need to insert another row for the beginning balance. Label this row beginning balance and put the amount borrowed in D11. Now let's fix the number format for the rest of our schedule. It might be personal preference, but I think a $sign by every number in a schedule is messy and distracting. Let's leave the $sign by the beginning balance and by our final totals and leave the middle of the schedule without $signs. Format cells, accounting, 2 decimal places, no symbol. Now we're ready to write a rounded formula to calculate the monthly interest. Equals round D11, the balance, principal balance, times interest, B6 divided by 12. The comma 2 tells Excel that you want the rounding 2 places to the right of the decimal. And be sure that the reference to B6 is a fixed reference cell. If $125 of our first payment is allocated to interest, and the rest of the payment is to be allocated to principal, at first glance, it would seem like a very simple formula can be used to calculate principal. Payment minus amount allocated to interest equals the amount allocated to principal. Be sure B8 is a fixed reference. So that calculates the right dollar amount to allocate to principal. However, by the time we get to the end of our amortization schedule, we'll have a little bit of a problem that needs to be fixed in this formula. Let's go ahead and leave it like this for now. We'll finish the amortization schedule. I'll show you the little problem, then I'll show you how to fix it in this formula. The principal balance of the loan after this payment is the balance before minus the amount allocated to principal. D11 minus C12. Okay, now let's copy the 3 formulas down through the 36 payment. But before I do that, I'm going to go back and check one more time that any mention of these cells here are a fixed reference. B6 is fixed reference. B8 is a fixed reference. And there's no mention here of these cells here. So the formula should copy down just fine. And it looks like everything came out okay, except for this little problem at the end. Our schedule shows a 10-cent overpayment on the loan. This balance should be 0, and it's not. It's negative 10 cents. That's because our last payment allocated too much to principal. To fix this problem, let's modify our formula in C12 using an if statement. Here is the logic we need to include in our if statement. Is the monthly payment greater than the principal balance before the payment? If true, enter the principal balance before the payment. If false, enter the monthly payment minus the amount allocated to interest. We're going to use this part of our formula, but it's going to be embedded in an if statement. Let me show you what it's going to look like. Here's the formula we had before, but we're going to embed it in an if statement. If B8 is greater than D11, enter D11. If false, enter B8 minus B12. Make sure that your parentheses are all closed up. This one closes that one. This one closes that one. So our formula should work. Now let's copy this down and see if it fixes that 10-cent problem. But first we should make sure that any of these cells are referenced with a fixed reference. This B8 has to be shown as fixed reference. That B8 is already a fixed reference. Yes, and making sure that B8 is a fixed reference cell, copying the formula down, we end up fixing our 10-cent problem. I see we ended up with dollar signs again, so I'm going to make sure that that is properly formatted without the dollar signs. And the very last thing is to make sure we have totals, and we can put dollar signs by our totals. Well, that's all for this video, and that's all for the videos on Chapter 2. See you next time in Chapter 3.